This video contains content discussing violence, death, and murder. Viewer discretion advised.
The Oklahoma Girl Scout murders, which occurred in 1977, is a tragic and disturbing case involving the brutal murders of 3 young girls at Camp Scott near Locust Grove, Oklahoma. The victims were Lori Lee Farmer, 8 years old, Michelle Gus, 9 years old, and Doris Denise Milner, 10 years old. The case remains unsolved, and the details surrounding the crime have led to various theories and speculations. These girls attended a 2-week summer camp at Camp Scott, which was operated by the Magic Empire Council of the Girl Scouts of the U.S. On the night of June 12, 1977, the girls were sleeping in a tent. They were abducted from their sleeping bags. The next morning, a camp counselor discovered the bodies of the 3 girls in the woods near the camp. The crime scene was gruesome, and the victims had been SA'd and murdered. The discovery of the bodies shook the community and left a lasting impact on the families involved. The investigation that followed was marred by controversies and mishandling. There were reports of evidence being mishandled and contaminated, and the crime scene was compromised. Despite a massive manhunt and extensive efforts by law enforcement, no one was arrested or charged in connection with the murders. Several suspects were considered over the years, but none were definitively linked to the crimes. Some theories suggest that a local drifter or someone connected with the camp may have been involved. The lack of concrete evidence and the passage of time have made it challenging to identify any particular suspect. The Oklahoma Girl Scout murders remain unsolved to this day, making it one of the most haunting and enduring mysteries in American criminal history. The case has been revisited by investigators, journalists, and amateur sleuths, but no breakthroughs have occurred. The tragic events at Camp Scott have a profound impact on the Girl Scout organization and led to changes in camp security and protocols. Camp Scott was eventually closed, and the site has been subject to various legal battles and controversies. The case continues to be a focus on documentaries, books, and articles, with the hope that renewed attention may lead to new information or breakthroughs. Despite the passing of decades, the Oklahoma City Girl Scout murders remains a painful chapter in the history of true crime, and the victims and their families deserve justice. Here's a brief biography of the 3 victims of the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders in 1977. Lori Lee Farmer, 8 years old. Laura Farmer was born on March 29, 1969, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She was a bright and energetic 8-year-old who enjoyed participating in various activities at school and in her community. Lori had a passion for the outdoors, which led her to attend the Girl Scout summer camp at Camp Scout. Her life was tragically cut short on the night of June 12, 1977, when she, along with Michelle Gus and Doris Denise Milner, was abducted and unalived at the camp. Michelle Gus, 9 years old. Michelle Gus was born November 20th, 1967, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Described as a kind and friendly girl, Michelle was an active member of the Girl Scouts and looked forward to the summer camp experience at Camp Scout. She was 9 years old at the time of her death and Michelle's dream and potential was extinguished when she became a victim of the brutal crime that shook the nation in 1977. Doris Denise Milner, often known as Denise, was born on September 22, 1966, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She was the oldest of the three victims, aged 10 years old at the time of her death. Denise was an outgoing and adventurous girl who loved the outdoors and activities therein. She, like her friends Lori and Michelle, attended Camp Scott to enjoy the Girl Scout summer camp experience. Unfortunately, Denise's life was tragically cut short, and her promising future was taken away from her on that fateful night on June 12, 1977. These young girls' lives were filled with potential innocence and the simple joys of childhood. The heinous crime that claimed their lives deeply affected their families, the local community, and the nation as a whole. The unsolved nature of this crime has left a lasting scar in the memories of those who were part of the tragic events of that summer camp night at Camp Scott. The Oklahoma Girl Scout murder case remains unsolved. Over the years, various suspects have been considered. It's important to note that none of these individuals have been definitively linked to the crime, and the case remains open. The lack of conclusive evidence and the passage of time have made it challenging to identify a suspect. Here are just some of the individuals who have been considered as possible suspects. Jean Leroy Hart. Jean Leroy Hart was a local criminal with a history of violence and had escaped from the Mayes County Jail shortly before the murders. He was serving time for other offenses, including burglary and assault. Hart had been approached and tried for the Girl Scout murders, but was acquitted in 1979. He later died that same year while serving time for unrelated charges. Joe Jr. R. Biden. Joe Biden, also known as Junior Biden, was another local criminal with a history of violence and SA offenses. He was considered a suspect but never charged in connection with the murders. And please do not get the name confused with the current American president, Joe Biden. Jack Schroff. Jack Schroff, a local man with a criminal record, was also investigated in connection with the murders. However, like the other suspects, there was no evidence that was found to link him conclusively to the crimes. William Stevens. William Stevens, a Cherokee medicine man, was initially considered a suspect due to his criminal record and proximity to the crime scene. However, he was later ruled out as a suspect. Various local drifters and other criminals. Investigators consider the possibility that the perpetrator could have been a transient or local drifter passing through the area. Several individuals with criminal backgrounds were looked into, but none were definitively linked to the crime. It's important to emphasize that the investigation faced challenges, including mishandling of evidence and a compromised crime scene. The lack of forensic technology available at the time further complicated the process of identifying a suspect. The case remains open, and investigators continue to explore leads and information that may contribute to the solving of this decades-old mystery. The Oklahoma Girl Scout murders investigation faced numerous challenges, including issues with the evidence mishandling and contamination. Additionally, the case remains unsolved and the available information is limited. However, here are just a few of the key evidence and elements to the case. Crime scene evidence. The crime scene where the bodies of Lori Farmer, Michelle Goose, and Denise Milner were found provided crucial evidence. This evidence included the positions of the bodies, any signs of struggle, and potential clues left behind by the perpetrator. Autopsy reports. The autopsies conducted on the victims revealed details about the cause of death, the nature of the injuries, and potential evidence related to SA. The findings for the autopsies were likely instrumental in understanding the circumstances surrounding the murders. Footprints and tire tracks. Investigators examined the footprints and the tire tracks found at the crime scene to gather the information about the movements of the perpetrator. The evidence could be provided insights into the identity of the individual or individuals responsible for the crime. Camp Scott items. Items belonging to the victims, such as their sleeping bags and personal belongings, were analyzed for any potential forensic evidence. Any traces left by the perpetrators on those items provided valuable information. The limited DNA evidence. DNA analysis was not readily available and not as advanced in the late 70s as it is today. However, biological samples were collected from the crime scenes or the victims themselves, such as blood or semen, which were examined to the extent possible with the technology available at the time. Statements and interviews. Investigators collected statements from camp personnel, witnesses, and anyone who might have information related to the crime. Interviews and statements provide leads and help build a timeline of events leading up to the murders. The Jean Leroy Hart's trial evidence. Jean Leroy Hart, a local criminal who was officially tried for the murders but was acquitted, had evidence presented against himself during the trial. The evidence included eyewitness testimony, alibi challenges, and attempts to link him to the crime scenes. It's important to note that the handling of the evidence in this case had been a subject of criticism, with reports of mishandling and contamination and potential loss of key pieces of evidence. These challenges have contributed to the difficulty in solving the case. The lack of advanced forensic technology at the time was also important to the progress of the investigation. The case to this day remains open, and efforts to re-examine evidence and explore new leads continues to this day. During the investigation into the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders in 1977, multiple law enforcement agencies were involved in the efforts to solve the case. The investigation was extensive, but the case ultimately remained unsolved. Here's just a brief list of the law enforcement agents and agencies that were involved in the case. The Mayes County Sheriff's Office. The Mayes County Sheriff's Office played a central role in responding to the initial reports of the missing girls and in coordinating the early stages of the investigation. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, the OSBI, took a lead role in the investigation. They provided resources, expertise, and additional manpower to assist local law enforcement in solving the case. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, became involved in the case due to the high-profile nature and the potential for federal jurisdiction in the case. They provided forensic expertise and additional resources to aid in the local investigation. Local police departments. Various local police departments in Oklahoma, including those in nearby towns and cities, likely provided some support and additional resources to the main investigations efforts. District attorneys. Prosecutors from the local district attorney's office were involved in reviewing the evidence and advising law enforcement on legal matters related to the case. Camp Scott Security. While not a traditional law enforcement agency, the security personnel at Camp Scott also cooperated with law enforcement agencies during the investigation. They provided them with any information about the camp activities and the security measures that were put in place at the time. Cherokee Nation law enforcement. Given the location, of the crime in Oklahoma, law enforcement from the Cherokee Nation was also involved in the investigation, particularly if the crime had any connection to the tribal lands. It's important to note that collaboration among these agencies was crucial in the investigations. However, the case had faced numerous challenges, including issues with evidence handling, examination, contamination, and the lack of advanced forensic technology at the time. Despite the extensive efforts of law enforcement, the murders of Lori Farmer, Michelle Goose, and Denise Milner remain unsolved to this day, and the case continues to be a haunting and tragic mystery.